15 or 16 degrees Celsius. By Sunday, all that wet weather's pretty much out of the way. It makes for a cold start to Sunday, but generally a good-looking day across the bulk of England and Wales. Plenty of sunshine. Scotland, Northern Ireland, mostly starting dry, but more rain coming in from the northwest as the day goes on. Temperature's not as high, and after that chilly start, we'll probably get up to 12, 13, maybe 14 degrees Celsius. Goodbye.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. Big problems to the west of Edinburgh. The A71 has been closed between the Down the Hoy Hotel and the Country Club at the scene of the accident, and near the Scottish border in Northumberland. West of Alnwick, the A697 remains shut in the Newmore Crossroads and Frunton after a lorry overturned and left a large spillage of chemicals all over the carriageway at around 5 o'clock this morning. On the M6 in Staffordshire, one lane shut northbound from junction 16 to 17 near Stoke-on-Trent, where a lorry's broken down. The M11 in Cambridgeshire now partly blocked northbound, or just hearing from the police in the last few seconds, it's now blocked from junction 10 to 11 towards Cambridge following what is being described as a serious accident. And the M5 in Somerset down to a single lane southbound, junction 22 23 towards Bridgewater for emergency repairs, long queues back to Portishead. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to Lee Anderson's Real World. Tonight on the show we have political commentator Russell Quirk. Mr. Popular himself, Matthew Stadlen, is back on the show. We have royal historian Rafe Haydor Mancu and entrepreneur and businessman Carl Mannion. But first, let's go to the news.
Very good evening to you from the newsroom. It is just coming up to 1 minute past 7. The top story tonight, one of the world's most prolific online child abusers has been sentenced to life today in prison with a minimum of 20 years. Alexander McCartney admitted 185 charges involving 70 children, including the manslaughter of a 12-year-old girl from the United States. Police, though, believe the total number of children he abused is about 3,500. Catherine Kierans from Northern Ireland's Serious Crime Unit said earlier that thousands of children and their families have been left dealing with the traumatic aftermath.
Their courage stands in stark contrast to McCartney's cowardice in targeting vulnerable young girls. The bravery of the young victims has been an inspiration to everyone who worked on this case. His conviction sends a message to other abusers. Your actions have dire consequences, and there is nowhere to hide from the justice system.
The number of migrants crossing the Channel into the UK so far this year has already surpassed the entire total for 2023. Today's milestone was reached when the Border Force vessel Typhoon arrived in Dover with 55 migrants on board, bringing this year's total to 29,451. That is just over the 29,437 recorded last year. Over 12,000 migrants have arrived 1,200 migrants have arrived this week alone, with calmer weather allowing a sharp rise in crossings. Officials, though, now predict up to 40,000 migrants could cross by the end of the year, despite Labour's pledge to tackle the crisis and, they say, to smash the gangs. A Home Office spokesperson calls the latest migrant deaths a devastating tragedy as people smuggling operations continue to escalate. Tommy Robinson will miss his own planned march tomorrow for thousands of protesters after being arrested by Kent police. The 41-year-old, known as Stephen Yaxley Lennon, is accused of contempt of court related to a film he aired at a previous protest in London, making libelous claims against a Syrian refugee. It comes as he's also facing additional charges under the Terrorism Act for allegedly failing to provide his mobile phone PIN to police. Well, as supporters are preparing to demonstrate tomorrow, significant police presence is expected to ensure safety amid expected counter-protests. And for the first time since the 1980s, the Washington Post, one of the most influential newspapers in the United States, has tonight announced it will not be endorsing any candidate in the upcoming presidential election. The paper's CEO says that decision reflects a return to the paper's roots and aims to, he says, uphold the values of character and courage in the nation's leadership. Well, the Post's editorial board has had a long history of endorsements, typically backing Democrats like Obama, Clinton and Biden in recent elections. Those are the latest headlines for now. A full roundup in the next hour. Now, though, it's back to Lee Anderson.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome to Lee Anderson's Real World with me, Lee Anderson, the Reform UK Member of Parliament for Ashfield. And joining me tonight, he's back, the left in the corner. He's GB News' most popular political commentator. That is Matthew Stadlen. And we've got Russell Quirk back. I think it's the second time.
I thought you were going to say second most popular.
Well, second most popular. Look, it's going to be a great debate tonight, folks. So we've seen this week, Matthew, the outcome of the Chris Kaba case. Now, should his criminal past have been exposed sooner?
Not according to the judge.
I'm asking you.
Yeah. Well, it's very difficult for me to double guess a judge, as I'm sure you'll appreciate. I was not in that courtroom. And just imagine if it had been disclosed and there had been a mistrial. I mean, the one thing we do not want in these cases, apart from a miscarriage of justice, is a mistrial, because then justice isn't served. So in the view of the judge, it was right that the jury should not know that information. But I also think that it is right that those restrictions have been now lifted. Now, you might say, well, if Chris Kaba's past had been known all along, that might have diffused some of the tensions in communities in London and beyond. That's all very well, and it might be right, but the priority has to be that justice is properly served.
So I'm in the uncomfortable position of slightly agreeing with Matt Stadlen here.
Really?
On the basis that there is a legal process, and if the jury had been compromised in terms of them having information that was not technically relevant at the time of making the decision. So what it I think turns on is the fact that when Martin Blake, the police officer, actually shot Carver, he did not know who Carver was. So therefore,
do we know that though?
I think so. Yeah, I think, and therefore or if we don't know that, it's not something you can presume. So I think from the point of view of the safety of the verdict, you have to move to one side his criminal past. However, there's a couple of things I would add, Lee. One is that, of course, the family then tried to suppress Chris Carver's past, notwithstanding what the judge had said, tried to paint him as, a pillar of the community and a lovely lad. They issued nice smiling photos of him as if, he was butter wouldn't melt.
Some local politicians as well, Russell, doing this.
Yeah. So there's that. Now, of course, it is absolutely right that his criminal past should come out now on the basis that we know exactly what sort of individual he was and what he is alleged to have done in terms of shootings in nightclubs and so on. He wasn't a nice guy. He was a criminal. He was a wrong 'un, basically. But I'm more concerned about the judge, Mark Lucraft, who took the decision that he would name the police officer, Martin Blake. Now, that needs to be looked at in some detail, I think, because it was said that Martin Blake was under threat, that he'd had threats to his life, as had his family. As a consequence of that, Blake has now had to move out of his home. His kids have had to move out of school, and he now has apparently a £10,000 bounty on his head by way of the gangsters that were affiliated to Carver. So why on earth would the judge allow a serving police officer that has now been found innocent?
Let me come back to Matthew on this one. Why on earth, Matthew, would the judge release this police officer's name?
That's a very good question. I think the answer to it probably, I can't answer for the judge, but I suspect it's because of the principle of open justice. And what we've seen as a result of this case is that the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, is now changing the law so that there is a presumption of anonymity for police officers in this sort of case. It is absolutely outrageous, despicable, disgusting. You find the adjective that there is now this allegedly a bounty on this officer's head.
Sorry, can we just unpack this?
Let me just finish the answer, if I may. Let me finish the answer. It's completely horrific, and anyone who is caught up in such a bounty needs to be found by the police, and they need to face justice.
So this week in the House, just this week in the House, I got up and commended this officer and his colleagues and asked Yvette Cooper to do the same. She sort of didn't. She wouldn't mention the officer by name. Do you think the police actually believe that this government and the judiciary have got their backs?
I think they're worried about the effects that such support would have on the ethnic community. And of course, this government are very, very keen to make sure that they have kind of a foot both sides of the fence, so to speak. Now, of course, politicians are elected, particularly governments, to make decisions. This government keep talking about making tough decisions. Well, now that Blake has been found not guilty, wouldn't it be nice if actually we had the politicians of this country, that actually those police serve, particularly firearms officers, of course, that protect MPs and government members. Wouldn't it be nice, actually, to see some support from the government? And I'll tell
what do you mean by the ethnic community? The
Labour government, I'll tell it exactly as it is. The Labour government,
community.
The Labour government are scared. The Labour government are scared of blighting the ethnic community by coming out.
So what ethnic community?
So, well, I don't know if you're aware, Matt, I don't know if you're aware. Hang on, let me get a word in, Matt. I don't know if you're aware, but Chris Carver was black. I'll tell you what happened literally 2 days after the incident back in September 2022. The Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, issued a statement saying, our thoughts are with Chris Carver, our thoughts are with his family, and the black community, we need to be careful of how they might respond to this. In other words, I support Chris Carver and the black community no matter what happens, even though I don't know the facts. That was the statement from Sadiq Khan. So don't tell me that this Labour government, this Labour Party, are not playing fast and loose ethnically.
Matthew, just to respond to this, I mean, that's an astonishing thing to talk about.
But it's fact.
Let me respond to say the ethnic community. Am I part of the ethnic community as a half-Jewish person? Let me finish. Let me finish. Is the director on this show who is Asian part of the ethnic community? Is the cameraman who is black part of the ethnic community? Are we all part of one giant homogenised community of which you are not part because you happen to be white British, Russell? And also, let me finish. Let me finish. And it's very dangerous talk to talk about the ethnic community. At least say communities, plural. But Lee, let me respond to you as well. You question whether the government has the back of the police. And I'd say to you, it's you and Reform who have been banging the drum for week after week after week or month after month, saying there is two-tier policing. You don't think that undermines the police forces of this country?
Look, Matthew, let me just...
I need to come back on the allegations.
You can come back. I need to come back on this nonsense being spouted by Matthew once again on this show. I'm going to ask you a question at the end, Matthew, but consider this. My inbox is full of emails from serving police officers and retired police officers supporting me and Reform UK on this stance. And they are quite clear in their message. There is two-tier policing. Russell?
Yeah, so just to respond to the ridiculous victimhood-like statements and rant that Matt has just seen from Matt Stadler. What we always see from the left, of course, is, oh, quick, I've got an opportunity to play the victim here. What I said was, hang on, Matt, wait a second. You've had your say, you've had your rant, now let me defend myself, please. So what I said was that the Labour government and the Labour Mayor of London are very, very scared of coming down against ethnic communities. Now, whether that is Asian, Black, Chinese or Dutch, it doesn't matter. Let's not get caught up in the ridiculous syntax from the far left
it's your
guy
syntax.
in the corner.
You talked about
I'm saying, as a matter of fact, that as per the two-tier policing and two-tier justice that we know is in place in this country, we've got to talk about it. Do you know what we've also got to talk about is the fact that people that come to this country from other countries might actually have a greater predisposition to commit crime. Matt's now going to be going crazy that I've just said that. But Denmark and France have had those studies done. If we don't talk about the fact that people from Somalia, Kenya and Syria might actually have a higher propensity to commit crime in this country, then we'll never fix the problem. But people like him continually want to say...
people like him.
Yeah, people like him that are apologists on the far left, where we can't talk about
on the far left.
We can't talk about immigration.
This is just completely bizarre to call me and someone on the far left. I couldn't even
we have
vote.
a poll of
Just
people that
listen
think
to me.
whether he's far left or not.
I couldn't even vote for the Labour Party when Jeremy Corbyn was leader.
Because he's not left enough.
Don't be ridiculous. I'm centre left. I'm centre left if I'm anything. Let's just nail this question though. Let's nail this question about the police if we can. And it's a difficult question to nail. On Lee's side, he thinks there's two-tier police. And then the next moment, he's standing up for certain police officers, but not for police forces. It's very confused. What I will say is that Dame Louise Casey released a hundreds of pages report last year into the Metropolitan Police, the police force that polices my city, where I live and where I was born, and it said it was institutionally racist. And not that, just that, she had other very serious criticisms as well. There is a real concern amongst some people in some communities that the police is racist, and that seems to be backed up by that report.
So we have to address it. We got Russell. Mayor Khan's police force in London is institutionally racist. What's he playing at?
Well, but he's from an ethnic minority himself.
Yeah, exactly.
So why doesn't he do something about that? I mean, he's been in power 9 years.
Yeah. Why doesn't he do something about it, Matthew?
Yeah.
Well, he should.
He runs the police. He is the Police and Crime Commissioner for London.
He should be, but the fact he himself comes from an ethnic minority has got nothing to do with it.
Well, you think that it would be in his best
Sadiq
interest?
Khan like we should treat any other politician, like we should treat Lee or anyone else, hold them to account. Their ethnicity
So here we have it. Here we have it,
irrelevant.
Russell. I mean, Matthew Stadler's admitted that the Mayor Khan's police force is institutionally racist. I would say...
Does that mean Sadiq
not
Khan's
just Mayor
racist?
Khan's,
What does it mean?
the
Does it
Home
mean Sadiq
Secretaries
Khan's
as well. The
racist?
Home Secretary also has a degree of oversight, and there have
Matt,
been
you're
Tory...
saying
There have been
Sadiq
Tory
Khan's
Home
racist.
Secretaries. There have been Tory Home Secretaries.
Are
after
you
Tory
saying,
Home
Matthew,
Secretaries.
on this programme, on a Friday night, that Mayor Khan's London Metropolitan Police Force are institutionally racist?
I've already said it very, very clearly that the Metropolitan Police, according to Dame Louise Casey, who was asked to do an official report into the Met Police, has said it is institutionally racist. And that is why there is a lot of disquiet. There's a lot of disquiet amongst some
If it's
communities.
true, why do we see different parts of the community policed in a different way then? Why do we see people at St George's Day parades being policed very, very differently to those that are being, let's say, out there trying to promote
Matthew's
the Palestinian
favourite festival of the year, the Notting Hill Carnival.
Yeah. So why are they policed differently, do you think?
Why
Well, you claim they're policed differently.
Well, they
but
really are. The data says, and
you claim
rank and
they
file
are,
police officers
but
say
you claim they are because you're the sort of chap, I'm afraid, Russell, who'll look at clips on Twitter and take that as what is police policy.
No,
my
I
answer
police
to you,
officers.
my answer to you is very, very clear. No, my answer, I don't care whether you are white, black, Jewish, Muslim. If you commit a crime on the streets of London or anywhere else in this country, you should face the full force of the law. And I go back to... Let me finish my sentence. Let me finish my sentence.
What about the Manchester
Let me finish
Airport
my sentence. I go back to the story
It's
that
a
we
feisty
started.
one tonight.
I go back to the story that that catalysed this conversation that we started on. Let me finish. That gang, the 6-7 gang, of which Chris Cabba was allegedly a part.
Well...
Those people should face the full force of the law.
Well, that was a feisty 12 minutes debate there with Matthew and Russell, but do not go away because coming up next we've got royal historian Rafe Haydel Manku.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
You know, is the fact that electric blanket sales going up actually a good thing? This means that people are switched on to the problems that the winter might hold, that they might have some defence against it, or is it a real indictment of a Labour government that they aren't going to be able to, you know, support elderly people in their hour of need?
Good morning, by the way.
Morning.
I think the sale of electric blankets may well be because we've had this cold snap because of the Arctic weather coming in from the north. However, I think it's an absolute reality that, as your clip said, that over 800,000 elderly people who are eligible for the winter fuel allowance, who can get pension credits, are struggling to apply. And so what is absolutely essential at the moment is that all of those older people who are eligible for pension credits do apply and do get what's owed to them. The benefits are owed to them. And the average that people will get through pension credits is about £78 a week. So that's definitely going to make a massive difference to people who are really struggling.
What can organisations like yours do to encourage people to, I guess, educate themselves on technology and make that first step into the digital world, which is very intimidating at times?
Absolutely, and that's what we do at Good Things Foundation. So we're a national charity. We work all across the whole of the UK. And in your clip there, you had Links Digital, and they're a member of what we call the National Digital Inclusion Network, which is a network of local charities, small local community organisations, food banks, job centres, old people's clubs. So anyone, any organisation at that local level.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back to Lee Anderson's Real World. I'm delighted to be joined by Rafe Haydel Manku. You are a royal historian.
That's
How did
right.
that come about, young man?
How did that come about?
Yeah.
Just by researching the subject since I was a teenager. I've been doing royal commentary since 1997, actually.
Okay.
Since the death of Diana, both here and in North America. But there's one of the feathers in my hat. It's not the only one.
Okay. So Prince Charles this week, he came in for, I say Prince Charles, it's King Charles. I can't get used to saying King Charles. King Charles and Camilla are been in Australia this week. Come under a little bit of stick, should I say, from certain people in Australia. about "You're not my king," etc. What's all that about?
Well, I hate to break it to them, but whether they like it or not, he is their king. Simple matter of law. But I think the monarchy can be very happy with this trip. You know, republicanism has been the biggest political failure of modern times, and I think the success of this trip has been another quite unexpected blow against the Republican cause. Because, you know, for 30 years now, Republicans have said, oh, when Queen Elizabeth II dies, support for the monarchy will collapse and Australia will inevitably become a republic. Well, actually, the polling shows that support for the monarchy is higher now than it was in 1999 when they actually had a referendum on the issue. It's actually higher than at any point since 1979. So I think actually, contrary to what everyone expected, support for the monarchy has actually increased to such a point that 75% of Australians don't think they will see Australia become a republic in their lifetime.
Yeah, I mean, we are, thankfully, still a nation of flag wavers in this country. I've seen pretty much the same in Australia this week, over the past week or so. Yes, there's been a few out there, but, you know, King Charles, and they said Prince again, King Charles, I was never his biggest fan. I thought the Queen was great, obviously. Never his biggest fan, but I think he's sort of grown into the role now. I know he's old and he's got his health issues, but he seems to be doing a pretty decent job.
Yeah, well, you have to understand, of course, he had the longest apprenticeship in history. And, you know, whether you agree or don't agree with his views, you can't deny that he's passionate about Britain and the British people. And I think it's much better to have a prince who is that passionate and concerned, whether you agree or not, rather than having a playboy prince who spent the last 50 years in Monaco at the casino and so forth. But he fully understands, as king, he can't be that same activist prince. And so I think he's conducted himself extremely well. And I think the people have got to know him in a way that they didn't before, because he was always under the shadow of his late mother, God bless her. And, you know, now it's just a shame that he wasn't able to go to Canada in May.
That's true.
Hasn't been able to go to New Zealand now, because the Commonwealth realms need to see the king, actually. As the Queen said, I must be seen to be believed, and they need to see
he always
in action.
He always seems, Rafe, to have a smile on his face, does King Charles, unlike his son, Harry, who seems to be miserable all the time. What's going off there?
Well, I mean, poor Harry isn't the longest sulk in history. You know, the king is a good Christian father. I think he's hoping that Prince Harry will become that prodigal son who will come home eventually. But Prince Harry, I think, is leading a very lonely existence in America. All of his social circle are really Meghan's friends. They're not his. She's got what she wanted to out of the relationship. She's now, you know, mixing with A-lister celebrities like Serena Williams and so forth. She's got her company going. He's not a businessman. He only knows how to be a soldier and a prince. And those aren't really two, you know, qualities that go very far in California.
I suppose it's we seem to forget. I've got a lot of sympathy with Prince Harry. I know a lot of people haven't, but he is the youngest, so he's always had to sort of play second fiddle to his brother. He's never going to be king. We know that. He knows that. He lost his mum at a really young age, so I've got quite a bit of sympathy for him and what he's been through.
Well, that only goes so far, though. We've all got sympathy for anyone who's lost their parents, but, you know, there comes a point where, you know, he's not 20 years old.
No,
he's not 30. He's, you know, he's 40 now. And I think, you know, you get to a point where you have to start thinking about the bigger and more important things in life. Is it worth holding on to grudges, given the age of his father, given that his children haven't seen their grandparents? I think, you know, you need to reevaluate your life when you get into middle age and hopefully have a bit more maturity.
And Harry's older brother, William, he goes under the radar slightly. He just behaves himself. He's a statesman. He's cracked on. He's got a lovely wife. He's got family. And when you look at him, he just reminds you of his mother, you know, 40 years ago.
Well, we're extremely lucky to have the Prince and Princess of Wales because they are the future of the monarchy. And we're just so reassuring to see that even in Australia and elsewhere, firstly, the king is more popular than any Australian politician or any British politician.
Well, that's not difficult.
That's not difficult, but Prince William is even more. Prince William is even more popular with the public, which bodes very well for the succession of the monarchy, I would say.
Yeah. So we don't hear so much these days about King Charles talking to plants and flowers and trees and stuff like that. I know he's a massive environmentalist, but we don't hear so much of that, and his political leanings as well.
Yeah, what I think, you know, what I always find funny is that so many of the critics of Prince Charles over the years...
King Charles,
sorry, even I do it. You've got me doing it now. You know, in many ways, he was a Renaissance man, right? And he was concerned with issues in the 80s, which are actually the issues of today. And a lot of the people who just didn't like him actually were sympathetic to his ideas. But actually, whatever we think, and we do have issues with some of his positions, he actually is on the same level as the majority of the British public. And all the polls show that actually he's much more in tune with the concerns and interests of the great British public.
So, Rafe, fast forward 100 years, we'll be dead and gone. Will there still be a royal family, do you think, in this country?
Well, just remember King Farouk of Egypt, who said that at the end of the day, there'll only be 5 kings left: King of clubs, spades, diamonds, hearts, and the King of England.
Yeah, and hopefully in 100 years' time, there'll be somebody somewhere, if they're sad enough, they'll be on YouTube looking at this interview about our king, our queen, our royal family, and the impact our royal family have had all across the world, because still now, when our royal family go to these countries, there's still a massive interest from these countries, places like Samoa where they're visiting this week.
Yes, of course, Samoa. We've got CHOGM, the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, which is a gathering of the 56 Commonwealth nations. Reparations is one of the issues going to be discussed there. Keir Starmer, thankfully, has tried to pour cold water over all of that. But you're quite right. There is a magic to monarchy. I remember when Queen Elizabeth II went to the UN to give a speech. All of these diplomats were acting like giddy school children, fighting over each other to get a photograph of this frail old woman. They wouldn't do that for any president or so forth. The monarchy is a huge asset to us in terms of our soft power, and I think we should be greatly proud and celebrate that fact.
Rafe, that has been a fascinating discussion. Our 8 minutes is up. Thank you for joining us here on Lee Anderson's Real World. Coming up next, we've got Right versus Left with Matthew Stadlen and Russell Quirk.
Evening. Thanks for joining me for your latest weather update from the Met Office. Here on GB News, 3 areas of weather tomorrow. A fine day for many, but there will be some wet weather in the far northwest and quite grey and a little damp in the far southeast. The bigger picture shows an area of low pressure down to the southwest. That is just edging away. This weather front is moving north, bringing some damp conditions through this evening across central and southern Scotland, clearing away from northeast England. At the same time, overnight, some patchy rain just trickling up from France towards Kent and maybe even into the London area. But most places dry and clear through the nights. Temperatures could dip down to single figures, but generally pretty mild for the end of October. Into tomorrow, and as I said, for many of us, it's a fine day, but there will be a weather front bringing cloud and rain into the Outer Hebrides and across the Northern Isles, and that will only slowly track its way southwards across parts of the mainland down towards the Highlands. But for much of Scotland, Northern Ireland, it's a dry start to the weekend. Could be some fog around, and further south, maybe a little misty in places. Certainly a grey start for East Anglia in the southeast. A little bit of rain and drizzle likely here. Staying quite damp, actually, across parts of the southeast for most of the day. Quite windy in the far southwest, but not as windy as today. But for the Isles of Scilly and Cornwall, still a noticeable breeze. Could be the odd shower, but much of southwest England, Wales, northern England, eastern Scotland, dry and fine. That weather front will bring cloud and rain to the west coast of Scotland and much of Northern Ireland by the afternoon. But in the sunny spells, feeling pretty pleasant, 15 or 16 degrees Celsius. By Sunday, all that wet weather's pretty much out of the way. It makes for a cold start to Sunday, but generally a good-looking day across the bulk of England and Wales. Plenty of sunshine. Scotland, Northern Ireland, mostly starting dry, but more rain coming in from the northwest as the day goes on. Temperature's not as high, and after that chilly start, we'll probably get up to 12, 13, maybe 14 degrees Celsius. Goodbye.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm delighted to welcome back Matthew Stadlen and Russell Quirk, both political commentators. It's time for Right versus Left. In a couple of weeks' time, we've got the assisted dying bill coming back to Parliament. That's going to be a free vote, guys. This is a private member's bill by Kim Ledbetter MP, Labour MP. But Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, is decided is going to vote against this bill, Matthew. I think he actually voted for it back in 2016. Where do you stand?
Well, so this is something that doesn't lend itself to the sort of fieriness, perhaps, that we've just had, because it's a incredibly sensitive issue that affects all of us, and that, you know, one day we may confront as individuals. We may be in a position where we would rather die than go through what we're experiencing. I thought, as many of us have, a lot about this since it has come back up as a live political issue. And I think I'm against it, but then I test it. And I think if I were the MP in the House of Commons in this free vote, and it was down to me, I had the deciding vote, would I really vote against the wishes of so many people who would be in a position where they want assistance with their dying because they are going through such a terrible time? And I'd find that incredibly difficult.
Russell, where do you stand on this?
Look, I think it should be up to the individual. I think there needs to be check and balances, of course. I think there can only be special circumstances. I think there needs to be a check and balance in terms of how it is signed off, in terms of you being in a medical position whereby A, you are terminally ill, and B, you're in pain. But I think it should be up to the individual. I think if there's ever a situation or a circumstance where the state should not be involved, this kind of big state thing that we're sleepwalking into, it should be situations like this. I do think what's interesting, though, is Wes Streeting changing his mind. Are we seeing the difference between shouting in opposition with no consequences and then actually the realisation in government that you actually have to bear the consequences of your decisions?
I think the local polling I've done in the past, they're pretty much 70-80% in support of a system.
So when it was last up for debate in the Commons in 2015, it was voted down.
Yeah, it was.
Quite convincingly. I just wonder...
Different makeup of MPs, though.
It was a very different makeup of MPs. Huge changes since then. Not least, of course, because the Tories almost got wiped out, your old party. But on this issue, just to reintroduce the idea of the big state, the problem is here that the state is going to be involved one way or the other. Because if the state says no, you can't get assistance, you might argue that's the big state. But if the state says yes, then members of the NHS, doctors, and I would argue if this does go through, those doctors should have no role in trying to make these patients better in the first place. In other words, they can't be part of their original medical team. They have to be a separate team just to keep those lines clearly.
Keep the emotion away.
Just keep those lines absolutely separate. But that would still be the state getting involved. So I don't think we can reduce it to a big state, small state thing.
It will be the individual having signed something to say that I would like to embark on this process, and the family making the decision rather than the government right now saying no.
But doctors on behalf of the state would then give that assistance.
No, but I don't see the
state is still involved.
I don't see the medical
At the moment, guys, at the moment, if you've got enough money in your pocket, and you have a desire to end your own life, you can travel to Switzerland for about 4 or 5 grand, I think it is.
Is it Dignitas?
Dignitas Clinic in Switzerland, and do it. So
people can't help you to do that.
No, they can't. And there was a case recently, I believe, where a gentleman had took his wife, and then they'd stopped him claiming money from his wife's estate. From a will. He actually won in the end.
Yeah.
But if you've got the pennies in your pocket, you can actually do this.
But what are the issues, guys, here? The worry for me, I mean, I do believe, and this sounds strange to use a religious word when I don't actually mean it religiously, but I do believe in the sanctity of life. But I think the real concern here is the idea that we would be asking doctors to help administer death. Whereas the role of a doctor, of course, is to do no harm and to try to keep us alive.
But they're not. They're mitigating suffering. And if the patient says, I would like my suffering to be mitigated on the basis that I'm in acute pain...
Can I just ask you both a question? Have you ever sat there with somebody who's dying?
Yes, last year.
My mother died of cancer.
And wish you could have ended their life.
But what you've just said there is instructive. You said, wish that...
We could help them.
We could end their life. Yeah. That's not what it's about. It's about what the patient wants, and that's one of my concerns, is the slippery slope, that they may feel pressure or that actual pressure would be exerted on them. I sat with my father last year as he was dying from mesothelioma, caused almost certainly by exposure to asbestos. I can tell you with absolute certainty that he didn't want his life to end. That's not to say that everyone feels that, and that's why we're having the conversation. Yeah. Something that really concerns me, and basically the palliative care provided to us was fantastic by the NHS, although there were some serious concerns. On my father's last day, we were about to run out of morphine. And that's a very, very serious position to be put into. It was cock-up rather than anything else. But I would just say this, I am very concerned that our Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, believes our palliative care system to be so bad that that would be the reason he would vote against this.
Well, Matt, sorry, can I add, not only does he feel that it's bad, and of course you will then say, well, that's because of 14 years of Tory neglect. Let's just park that for a second. It also shows he doesn't have any faith in his own ability to make it better over the next few years.
Yeah, well, he's got no medical qualifications.
Well, I don't think that's fair.
Because he's voting against something that will put more of a burden on palliative care.
It's going to take time to fix the health service.
I know that. He can't change it overnight. His ability to change the NHS.
No, he hasn't. We can't change it overnight. He's committed to changing it.
Matthew, it wasn't that long ago that we had the Liverpool care plan. Can you remember that? Where they used to just basically starve people to death and just put them on like end-of-life care in hospitals, not feed them the right amount of food and just leave people to die. I'm sure that's much crueler than...
Well, on the basis of it being their wish.
Oh, on the basis that they weren't going to live very long anyway.
And they knew that they wouldn't be able to...
I can remember my grandma being in hospital over 10 years ago now when she passed away, and they put her on this Liverpool care plan, which is basically just leave her.
Yeah. The other thing, though, is non-resuscitation. So when my mother was dying of cancer, which took weeks and weeks, and she was suffering, and it was very, very painful, and it was horrendous, she'd made it very, very clear, actually, way before that, when she knew she had cancer and she was going to get to that point, that she had a no resuscitation order. That was her diktat. In fact, she had it on a sign on the wall in the lounge, so that if anything happened to her and the ambulance crew came, they wouldn't resuscitate. So,
that's different. There is
no. I think it's the same as saying, I want to die. I want to die. I don't want to be here anymore.
That is assisted dying
it's
absence of
intervention.
Knowing that you're in so much pain that you want that pain to be quashed.
I don't think we have a law. I mean, maybe the law has been changing in certain areas. I'm not totally sure about that. But we don't have a law where you have to intervene.
Well, it's a duty, isn't it, of any medical professional to intervene and try and save someone's life.
What I'm saying is it's indicative of the will of the patient.
You may be right on that.
Yeah. So, guys...
The real issue, one of the real issues for me here is that we have to improve our NHS.
Yeah.
We can have a whole different debate about how we go about doing that, but when our Health Secretary thinks our palliative care system is so bad at the moment that he can't vote on this issue in a way he might otherwise, and in fact did vote in the past, we're in trouble.
I think that's just a cop-out.
I'd love to have a quick debate with him about how...
Let's go, guys, to the yes or no quiz. I know Matthew loves this. He's only lost once, and he's been on here about 15 times.
I've played it once, lost it once.
Yeah, it's not a good record, is it? And there's 5 questions. I think one of the questions, Matthew, to be honest, we've asked this many, many times. Anyway, number 1, Russell, do you support assisted dying?
Yes.
Matthew?
No.
Matthew, will Donald Trump win the US election?
Yes.
Yes.
Matthew, should police officers on trial for shooting, like we have had this week, have anonymity?
Yes.
Russell?
Yes.
3-3. Russell, should MPs accept gifts?
No.
No.
Ooh. All right. And last and final question, should we have PR voting in the UK? Russell?
Yes.
No.
It's 5 each. It's 5-all. That's I've got to share the prizes this week, guys. Matthew, did you want to come back on one, the anonymity on police officers, or did you want to talk about that again? Or do you want to come back on MPs accepting gifts, or PR, or Trump, or assisted dying? You're looking vacant at me now, mate.
Well, because I don't know whether it's part of the game or not.
I think it's lost. I think it's just lost.
Hang on.
Say yes. Unlucky, Matt. Thank you very much.
I did say, if you'd have paid attention, Matthew, it was a draw. It was 5-all. But if you want to concede...
No, we usually have a penalty shootout, don't we?
If you want to concede...
We have a penalty shootout normally.
No, I think that's fair. I think you're both good at this. You're both going to go on forever and ever, and it's going to be... Look, I want you to come back on one.
Oh, yes. I think on the anonymity thing, that the key here is that you've got to balance open justice, which is a really, really important principle in this country, so that justice can be seen to be done. But at the same time, you don't want to be in a position where you're endangering the life of a police officer. Police officers have to be able to discharge their duties, which is to keep us safe.
Yeah.
Of course, at the same time, they have to be able to do. They have to do it within the law. This is a really thorny and difficult
So then,
area.
Russell, if you was on trial for some horrible crime and you was innocent, would you feel safe with Judge Stadlen sat there with his beady eyes looking at you?
Well, I don't know. I would hope it wouldn't get personal, but as often it does. Can I just talk about the gifts thing for a second, though? The gifts thing is literally politically and from a media commentary point of view going to be the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah, it is.
Again, no pun intended. But how can it possibly be that we should accept the premise of gifts? I don't see the difference between a Taylor Swift ticket or a suit and a bag of cash. There is no difference. They both have a monetary value. You can forgive the public, the electorate, for thinking that a gift therefore means influence.
Okay.
I don't believe that Wahid Ali or anybody else gives something for nothing.
On that point,
and I think it applies to all parties.
Well, Mr. Anderson, just very quickly, turn the tables for a second. Do you think it was right for your leader, Nigel Farage, to receive £32,000 worth of donation from someone who helped him with his accommodation and his flights, I think, when he went to the Republican convention in July?
Coming up after the break, we've got entrepreneur Carl Mannion.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Catherine Richards and Jake Singleton-Hill featured on the reality show Love is Blind.
Well, Catherine and Jake are joining us now in the studio for Saturday Morning Live. Thank you very much for joining us. And this is perhaps not the end result that people might have thought that they'd be seeing at this point, because you were both on the show, but you didn't fall in love in the pods, did you?
No, we didn't. I rejected him.
You guys look great together.
Yeah.
Very, very happy as well. It seemed like you guys were really strong, and it almost seemed like Freddie, after he admitted to you that he'd cheated in the past.
I actually respected the fact that he told me up front. I didn't even want to have that conversation, obviously. That was a conversation that we got told to talk about. And I respected his decision, but I think he felt that I was holding this grudge towards him that she really doesn't like, and which was not, and he knew this, because off camera we had many conversations where I was like, thank you for owning up, like, we can just move on from this. But if anything, I think he just felt guilty the whole entire time, and he put that on me, which is fine, but yeah, there's obviously a lot that people don't see.
So for viewers who don't know, Love is Blind is where you go and seek love and romance, but you don't see who you're speaking to, right?
No.
So, Jake, why did you go on the show?
My parents actually met in a very similar way. So my stepdad was texting my mum that he'd basically stolen the number off of a friend because the friend had met my mum in Blackpool, and they were texting for like 6 months. They'd never met. So that premise of how they got together and the marriage that they had was stunning. And to build a relationship not based on looks before you met, I just found that just incredible.
So do you believe in that concept? Is it lust or love at first sight?
It's weird.
It's a bit of both.
I think, it's definitely a bit of both. And I always say, as you get older, your looks will change, but your personality will stay the same.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Last time for Last Orders at the bar, and I'm delighted to be joined by Carl Mannion, an entrepreneur, and you're in the care industry now, I believe.
I am indeed, yeah, that's right.
Home care, this is where you get people going around into people's houses, looking after disabled people, people who are convalescing, and what would imagine old people as well. But you're having some problems at the moment, I believe, a lot of the care industry is with recruitment.
That's absolutely right. It's really, really difficult to recruit people from the UK. So we've taken a decision to recruit people from overseas at the moment.
Okay. Why are people in the UK reluctant to work in the care industry?
I think there's a number of reasons, but the main one from sort of where I come from, which is a relatively poor area.
Where do you come from? I can't tell.
I come from a place called Birkenhead, which is not quite Liverpool, so if there's any Scousers listening, we know we're not Scousers. But yeah, part of the problem is it's much easier and much more effective to remain unemployed than it would be to work as a carer for a couple of £1,000 a year more.
So do you think there's a case for government getting involved and looking at the benefit system and saying to somebody, look, it's no good having a life on benefits, go to work?
I think it's worth looking at, but I think it would sort of sacrifice a whole generation to change their mindset.
And would it attract the wrong sort of people, do you think? Because you've got to be, a certain mindset to do that sort of work, haven't you?
Yeah, you've got to be really resilient, and it can get very emotional at times working in care because you see a lot of upsetting things. So it's not just about the physical act of providing care, it's having that mental fortitude as well, which unfortunately in the day and age we live in, mental fortitude seems to be a dying character.
So I speak to a lot of people who come from different countries, obviously in my other job, and it would appear, and you can back me up on this if you want, Carl, that in other cultures, in other countries, especially the Asian community, they seem to look after their elders a little bit better and they're disabled people than what we do sometimes.
I think there's a really strong case for that, to be honest. Even in the UK, when people migrate over here, there are a lot of communities that really do believe and wholeheartedly take care of their elderly parents, their aging parents in their own homes.
And why is that, do you think?
I think there's a real strength of community within overseas workers and migrants when they come to the UK. I think they really understand traditional family values of taking care of one another.
And also in this country, I suppose, over the past 20, 30, even 40 years, we've, back when I was young, mothers worked part-time or didn't work at all. They stopped in, they made their home. They didn't have as much material stuff. But nowadays, mum and dad is working, to make ends meet. They want all the nice things in life. And sometimes, if their relatives are poorly, they just simply haven't got the time to look after them.
I think you've pretty much hit the nail on the head, actually. There's a lot of people that want material things rather than look after what they need, and they sacrifice the needs for the wants in a lot of cases. But obviously there is a case for the standard of living that we are encouraged to have.
You talk about migrants coming over to work in your industry. You wouldn't be so keen for a boatload of migrants to land at Dover this afternoon and come and want to work for your company, would you?
Well, I mean, we wouldn't be allowed to because there's a law that prevents us from doing that, first of all. And no, we wouldn't, because within the care industry, of course, we have to ensure that people have got relevant police clearances. They have criminality background checks. We check references, skills and qualifications. If a person was to enter this country via an illegal channel through not a recognised port of entry, we can't attest to the.
But they can after 1 year, Carl. If they've been here 1 year and their asylum case is taken above 1 year, they can then apply to have a job in this country. Would you take them on then?
Although they can apply to get a job, we would still have to go through police clearance certificates from their native country and then have to get references. So there would be a real barrier there if they'd said at the immigration point, well, we don't have any of this documentation or information. How could you then make it?
Okay, and what about people with criminal records from this country? Are they allowed to work in home care?
They are allowed. There's nothing legally to stop them unless they're on what's called a barred list. So let's say somebody did a petty crime 35 years ago, and since then they've been to university, or they've raised a family successfully for 30 years, and it was a one-off incident. We would look at that and do what we call a risk assessment to see if that person was then suitable. But if it was somebody who was a convicted thief, then that would be unlikely that they would be able to work in care.
So you've got a sideline as well. I believe you do a podcast. What's that all about?
Yeah, I created the Lazy Wealth podcast.
Lazy Wealth?
Lazy Wealth. And the reason for that is because I come from a relatively humble beginning, and it was really difficult to get a break in life. So what I do now is I have a podcast that helps people start businesses for 100 quid or less as a side hustle so that they can start acquiring money, because there's no excuse not to make money.
Give me an example how it works then. Give me a success story from this side hustle.
Yeah, we've had a load, and all of the things I've tried myself as well, so they're tried and tested. One thing
Get rich quick schemes, is that what it is?
No, it's not get rich quick. You've got to work for things in life. You can't just get rich quick and be in your sleep. So one of the things that we talk to people about is you can go to a charity shop, You can buy relatively good brands from certain charity shops that you can look at in the country. And then what you do is you clean them up. You can either wear them yourself, of course, clothing, and then you can sell them on some online sites like Vinted or eBay and such like, and make a small profit. Do that 30 times when you've got lots of time free. All of a sudden you end up with a spare £200 a week in your pocket that you can then start to turn into a business if you wish to.
So that's worth having, isn't it?
For free, yeah, it absolutely is. And again, you can do that for less than £100 to start up.
Okay, so another side hustle here. I believe you started your career in a pub. If you grab a pint pot, Carl.
Oh dear.
I'm going to get you pulling a pint, and it's the old neck oil. It's the most challenging pump in the pub. You've got 30 seconds.
30 seconds.
Pull a pint and plonk it on the bar. So how long did you work in a pub for?
Oh, about 5 years in total.
Yeah?
Yeah. It was a lovely experience getting to meet the local communities, but it's been a long time since I did that.
Well, I think you're actually not. I think you've been slightly.
That was
plonked on the bar, please, mate. Honestly.
Oh God, I'm embarrassed now. Look at that.
It was going well.
It was all going.
It was going well. It was going well. He's pulled a pint there. There's another pint on the floor on his shoes. It's not the worst we've seen.
Well, you could put a couple of flakes in that.
Well, I think it's all coming back. Or you could have a shave with it, couldn't you?
Absolutely.
Well, you could do a shave as well, but I still need talking. I want to give you probably 8 out of 10.
Oh, I'll take that. 8 out of 10.
So anybody watching this show who's got somebody who's looking for a job,
but not in a bar,
obviously you're not very good at that. Looking for a job, and they're thinking about care, whether it's in a care home or home care. What would you say to them, Carl?
There's tons of jobs available at the moment. It's really easy access to get into those things. You can start doing free courses online, which are fully funded, fully paid for, and there'll be hundreds of employers that'll be lovely to speak to you.
Okay, and what about the hours? Are these obviously we're getting rid of 0-hour contracts? How's that going to affect your business?
For us personally, we don't offer 0-hour contracts. We only offer either part-time or full-time. So it wouldn't affect us personally, but I know that there are other care companies that do offer that.
Will it affect them, do you think? Will it...
Yeah, I think it will affect them because a lot of people like the flexibility in care because it's a sort of 24-hour operation. It's not like a normal 9 to 5.
Because the 0 hours things, I'm a bit mixed on this. Some people actually like them, don't they?
Yeah, they do, yes.
It suits their lifestyle. Students, a good example. University students like working behind bars or doing other jobs and like that flexibility.
Of course they do, and even in care as well. Like some people will say, I just want to work, say, the weekend because I've got child commitments in the week and so on and so forth. So there is that element of flexibility that some employers might lose.
So perhaps I think the current government need to think about that a little bit more carefully because, you may want that phone call on a Friday night to offer you a Saturday shift or a Sunday shift to get that extra few quid in your pocket.
Absolutely. Flexibility is key for many service-based businesses, including care and obviously hospitality like this.
Okay, but while your pint's settled, it's not the best, it's not the worst. I would say stick to the care industry.
I'll stick to that.
It's been a pleasure, Carl.
Lovely.
That's Carl Mannion, Last Orders, on the pub. Been great. Thank you for watching Lee Anderson's Real World. It's been another great show with great guests. More of the same next week here on GB News. But coming up next, we've got Friday Night Live with the brilliant Mark Dolan.
Thank you, Lee. Well, what a busy show we've got for you. Happy Friday, one and all. Will next week's budget break Britain? Can the UK afford this Labour government? Plus, given that we ended slavery and gave the world the Industrial Revolution, is it the UK that should be paid reparations? I think money should be coming our way. Also, Donald Trump looks likely to win the US presidential election. But should Brits be celebrating? As a woke Tory councillor campaigns for non-binary toilets, should the new Tory leadership have a purge of lefties from the party? It's quite remarkable how many closet Lib Dems actually lurk within the Tory ranks. Also tonight, is Robert Jenrick a pound shop Nigel Farage? We'll discuss that. And in my flagship Friday feeling monologue, you won't want to miss this one, folks. Keir Starmer struggles to define things. What is a woman? What is far right? And who are working people? Well, I've got the answer and the definition. A busy show, Friday Night Live. That's next.
We'll see a cold snap, which will quickly develop into a warm front. Boxed Boiler Repairs, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Evening. Thanks for joining me for your latest weather update from the Met Office. Here on GB News, 3 areas of weather tomorrow. A fine day for many, but there will be some wet weather in the far northwest and quite grey and a little damp in the far southeast. The bigger picture shows an area of low pressure down to the southwest. That is just edging away. This weather front is moving north, bringing some damp conditions through this evening across central and southern Scotland, clearing away from northeast England. At the same time, overnight, some patchy rain just trickling up from France towards Kent and maybe even into the London area. But most places dry and clear through the nights. Temperatures could dip down to single figures, but generally pretty mild for the end of October. Into tomorrow, and as I said, for many of us, it's a fine day, but there will be a weather front bringing cloud and rain into the Outer Hebrides and across the Northern Isles, and that will only slowly track its way southwards across parts of the mainland down towards the Highlands. But for much of Scotland, Northern Ireland, it's a dry start to the weekend. Could be some fog around, and further south, maybe a little misty in places. Certainly a grey start for East Anglia in the southeast. A little bit of rain and drizzle likely here. Staying quite damp, actually, across parts of the southeast for most of the day. Quite windy in the far southwest, but not as windy as today. But for the Isles of Scilly and Cornwall, still a noticeable breeze. Could be the odd shower, but much of southwest England, Wales, northern England, eastern Scotland, dry and fine. That weather front will bring cloud and rain to the west coast of Scotland and much of Northern Ireland by the afternoon. But in the sunny spells, feeling pretty pleasant, 15 or 16 degrees Celsius. By Sunday, all that wet weather's pretty much out of the way. It makes for a cold start to Sunday, but generally a good-looking day across the bulk of England and Wales. Plenty of sunshine. Scotland, Northern Ireland, mostly starting dry, but more rain coming in from the northwest as the day goes on. Temperature's not as high, and after that chilly start, we'll probably get up to 12, 13, maybe 14 degrees Celsius. Goodbye.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Budget Day on GB News on Wednesday. Stay with us all day for the most anxiously anticipated budget in a generation.
Morning through to evening, we'll be here with insight and analysis, crunching the numbers
as we work out the cost to the country and, most importantly, to you.
Because the Chancellor has a bill to pay. The question is...
who's going to pay it? Budget Day, all day Wednesday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive
Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening. Before we start, congratulations to my brilliant producer, Mel, who is now happily married. Although, as she knows, the real honeymoon is working with me. From the world headquarters of GB News, this is Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. The weekend starts here, so bring your own drinks. The admission is free. On tonight's show, will next week's budget break Britain? Given that we ended slavery and gave the world the Industrial Revolution, is it the UK that should be paid reparations? Is money coming our way? Donald Trump looks likely to win the US presidential election, but